This is Dave Green, and we're going to talk about the winning GRE study plan. This is me. I'm a senior tutor here at examPAL, and we're going to be talking for the next hour about how to build a study plan. And before we do, if one of you guys could just let me know that I'm not talking to myself and that you can actually hear me. So if any of you could just tell me in the chat that if you're actually hearing me, that would be great. I already see one of you is typing, which is good. Thank you, Filio. I hope I said that right. Thank you very much, Jared. Great. Thank you, Taylor. Awesome. So the nice result now is that you also have all now discovered our chat function, and you can use it throughout to ask me questions. I will try and answer them as we go along. If not, I'll answer them in the end. So really feel free to ask. So before I hop into it, let me just tell you guys that just for being here with us, we have a special offer for you guys. This webinar actually launches our boot camp. It's a week which is aimed to provide you guys with study tips and test strategies that will help you ace the test. Tomorrow in the boot camp, you will learn how to solve fractions and percents questions and see how relevant this material is to real life. So during this whole week, you guys are welcome to a 25% discount on all examPAL courses. And to take us up on that, you can go to the bootcamp agenda, or you can click on the offer that Karine just posted in the chat. So that's the special offer, and excuse me, let's get to it. But before we do, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about who we are at examPAL and what we do. So very brief, very kind of succinctly, examPAL is a group of GRE teachers who have been working in the industry in other places and decided to band together and start a company that does it differently. And this is because this was based on an insight that we had, that students around the globe who are studying for the GRE are paying too much and they're doing it for the wrong product. And what's worse, they can only realize that this is the case when they're done with their preparation, when it's too late to do anything about it. And why is that? Well, there are a few things that bothered us, and we saw that bothered students about regular classroom courses. One is that it's quite frustrating. On the GRE, many of the questions, although there's only one answer, there's many different ways to get to that answer. And courses that are for a lot of people, and books also for that matter, tend to be one size fits all. The teacher will tell you this is the way to do it. And it might be correct for the teacher and it might be correct for some of the students, but it's not necessarily the best way to do it for you. So that's one thing. Another thing we've encountered is that one size fits all courses are very inefficient. Because one of the biggest challenges on the GRE, as we'll discuss, isn't knowledge or even really skill, it's time. And it's learning how to not only get to the solution, but do it very quickly. And once again, if you're teaching everybody to do it the same way, one of you might be better at calculating stuff really quickly, and another one of you might be better at finding a shortcut and doing it in a different way. And lastly, it's also quite inefficient. Excuse me, sorry, hope that won't happen again. So in a lot of these courses, students solve a lot of questions, a lot, like thousands of questions, but many of them are irrelevant to them. Some will be too easy and just boring, that's just a waste of time, and some will be too hard and they'll just be frustrating. To really improve, you need to solve questions that are around your level and maybe a little bit higher. And if you're all doing the same thing, then that's definitely not happening. So these are kind of the things that bothered us at examPAL and made us found our course. And also a central insight we had is that the thing that the GRE is really testing is what we call cognitive flexibility. And what we mean by this term, which might sound a little bit confusing, is your ability to change your set of tools very quickly according to changes in the data that you're getting. The test has very harsh time constraints, and we keep moving very quickly from one question to the other, from algebra to geometry to a word problem. So what we aim to do is not just provide you with the knowledge you need for the test, but to train you to find the fastest way to solve each question. So how do we do that? So one of the things that we really focus on is not teaching everybody the same way to solve, but when we approach the general question of how to solve the question, we ask a different question, which is how to solve it for whom. So on examPAL, we study the way that our students think. After you solve questions, we ask you what tools did you use. If you get it wrong, we ask you why do you think you got it wrong. And we gather that information trying to learn what your strengths and weaknesses are. We also study the effectiveness of the different solution tools based on our many thousands of students. So we have several possible solutions for many questions, and we ask our students, what did you use? Did it work for you? How long did it take? We have this information, and based on that, we get answers on what is the most efficient way on average to solve a certain question. And then we combine those two things to find the fastest way for you to solve each question, combining our knowledge about your specific strengths and weaknesses, and in general, what is the best way to solve this question, which is really something that not even a private tutor can do, right? Because we're with you in each and every question, from the very basics to the hardest ones, and we offer you a solution strategy. We're not just guessing it works, we're actually measuring it. So what does the course actually consist of? I'm going to do this quite briefly, so bear with me. But we start with interactive video lessons, which incorporate questions already in the lessons, which again, we're following how you do on them. And we have these lessons. There are two kinds of lessons for each and every topic on the GRE. There's an introduction where we teach the fundamentals of what this is about. So if it's triangles, we teach you the different formulas, how many angles are in a triangle, all that stuff. And then we have a second lesson, which we call a lesson in which we talk about solution strategies, about what are the different tools and tips you can use to solve this specific topic. And from there on, we move to the practice, which is really where we pride ourselves and where we feel that sets ourselves apart. Our practices start with a diagnostic phase, where we ask you questions and see how you solve them. Now, one of our main insights is that even though there are really a lot of different ways to solve questions sometimes, we can divide these in general into three major strategies, which we call the precise strategy, the alternative strategy, and the logical strategy. So precise, alternative, logical, that's PAL, PAL, which is the PAL in examPAL. That's why we're called that. So for example, the question that's on your screen, right, for every positive x and y, 3x plus 2y divided by x plus y is between, we can solve in several different ways. We can solve this in the most straightforward way, the precise way, which is just going ahead and simplifying the numerator and denominator and finding what it is between. We can solve it the logical way, the alternative way, by plugging in a number, in this case x and y equal 1, and then we solve for that, and then we see what it's between. Or we can solve it a logical way, really just using logic of what we know about the numerator and what we know about the denominator. So these are all possible ways to solve, and and what we do is we try and offer you the way that we think is going to work best for you. And in the diagnostic phase, really, we see how you're doing, and later on in the improvement phase, we get your feedback on what tools you're using, what mistakes you feel you're making, and we use all these things for the last phase of the practice, the optimization, where we are implementing this information and giving you both questions that we think are going to help you and offering you the solutions to those questions that we think are going to fit for you. So example, what you see on your screen now is a question where there are 4 different possible solutions, and we rank them according to how much they match your specific strengths. So for this, in this example, say we think you should go for a precise tool, and it's more specific than that. We tell you exactly which precise tool. So that's really us in a nutshell. I'm going to stop talking about us in just a second. We have a lot of awards. Our students like us a lot. And the last thing I'll say about our course is that we put our money where our mouth is, which is to say we're the only course I know of, at least, that has a real success guarantee. Up to 7 points increase in the GRE relative to a previous test. So if you've already taken the GRE and you're not happy with your score, we guarantee to improve you significantly. So don't hesitate to take us up on that. So that's who we are. As I mentioned before, you have a week to enjoy us 25% off. And without further ado, let's start talking about what you guys came here to hear. That's a homophone. So how to build a study plan. Okay, so let's break it down what actually we're asking here. One question that we should be asking is how much time do you need for your study plan? And actually this question as well is one that we can break down into two, because when we say time, one question is how much absolute time, like how many hours of studying are necessary. And the second question is how long a period do you need? How long should you start studying before your actual test on the calendar? So we're going to talk about both of these questions. Excuse me. And we're going to talk about the first one now, and the second one we're going to talk about in a lot more detail really throughout this whole webinar. So I'm going to make it simple. We think you need about 100 to 120 hours of overall study. 30 more than that, so 130 to 150 if you're a non-native English speaker. And I'm going to talk about what you do in those 30 hours. But that's really the outline of what we think is necessary. And as for the second question of how long you should spread this out over, so there are a few different options, and I'm going to talk about them a lot, but I'm just going to cut to the chase and say our recommended amount of time is around 6 to 8 weeks, so up to about 2 months, which if you do the math works out to be around 15 hours per week, which is actually not that much if you think about it. It means at the very least that you can incorporate it with other things that you may be, if you have a job and other things you may be doing in your life. But I'm getting ahead of myself because that's really what we're going to be talking about a lot now, building your schedule. So this is really the first question. Now, I'm just going to say, obviously, if you study 100 hours, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a high score. In fact, you can study 300 hours and it still doesn't guarantee you're going to get a high score. Obviously, quality matters quite a lot, and not only quantity. If you sit in front of a piece of paper and just stare at it without knowing what to do, hundreds of hours aren't going to get you anywhere. What the real question is how you're going to spend those 100 to 120 hours, and that's really what I'm going to talk about in the next 45 minutes. So, all right. So now, as to our next question, how long should you spread this over? So here the answer is more complex, and it depends. And the main factor is how much time do you have weekly and monthly? How much time do you have now between now and the test to spend studying? Can you devote all your time to studying, or is it something you have to do alongside lots of other stuff? So why is 6 to 8 weeks our recommended amount of time? On the one hand, it's not too short. Okay, it gives you enough time to both study and breathe a little bit, so you don't have to get overly stressed, as you might if you're trying to prepare in a shorter amount of time. On the other hand, it's not too long. You're not going to have enough time to start forgetting the material that you've already learned at the beginning of your studies, and you're probably not going to become exhausted from just months of putting your life on hold and preparing for the test. So, putting it simply, if fitting in 100 to 120 hours is possible for you over a 2-month period, this is what we recommend doing. And to give you an example of someone for whom this plan can work, let's talk about someone named John Doe. So what is who is John Doe? Well, John Doe is a first-time GRE taker. He's starting from scratch, and he has to study everything. Okay, he is a native English speaker, so he doesn't have to put a really heavy emphasis on vocab and memorization study, but he still probably should put some work in, because as we know, the vocabulary on the GRE is hard even for native English speakers, and it's going to help him if he adds to his daily schedule some quality reading. And also go over some grammatical rules, which is something native English speakers sometimes neglect at their own peril. So he works a 9-to-5 job, meaning his study time is going to be in the evenings and on the weekend. So he can comfortably schedule about an hour and a half of study in the evenings and 4 hours on weekend days. So in terms of material, John isn't going to know what he has to do, like what he's, I should say, not what he has to do, but what his strengths or weaknesses are before he gets started. So he really has to just cover everything. And he also has a few constraints. As I mentioned, he can spend all these hours working on the weekend and weekday evenings, but on the other hand, he 3 weeks before the test, he say yes to take a 5-day business trip, and during that time, he's not going to be able to study at all. Okay, the point is, of course, not that this plan is only good for you if you're exactly like John, who I just described, but if you're something like him, if this sounds something like your situation, you're working or you have something else that takes a lot of your time, but you still have a lot of time to study, and you do have some constraints but not overbearing ones, then we think this plan is for you, and we recommend going for it. So now let's talk about what this plan is. And I'm just going to say, if it's not the case for you, and it sounds too long or too short for you, then bear with me, because after this, I'm going to talk about a 1-month plan and a 3-month plan. So don't worry. But for now, what does a 2-month plan look like? Well, there are a few things that we should talk about in the 2-month plan. And I'm going to break it down really into 2 main periods. The first period is the 60-day plan. Right? So obviously, you might not have exactly 60 days. It might be a little bit less, a little bit more. I'm going to be talking about like an exactly 60-day plan. So just adjust accordingly if you have a little bit more or less time. So for a 60-day plan, for the first 47 days, what you're doing is reviewing the topics on the GRE and practicing them. Okay. What does that mean? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is make a list of all of the GRE topics, not just the high level, verbal and quantitative, but all of the subtopics that make up these sections, especially the quantitative. And on examPAL, this is automatic because our course is just built up of all the relevant subtopics. You have kind of a trail, and you tackle them one by one. So once you know what there is to study, what you're going to do is plan a 2-day mini schedule for each subject, and that mini schedule is going to look like this. On the first day of your 2-day mini schedule, you're going to review the fundamental material. On examPAL, what that means is you're going to watch an intro video, which talks about, as I already mentioned the intro video, so you know what it means. You're going to watch the intro video, which is the fundamentals, and the lesson video, which is applied, how to solve it. That's what you're going to do on the first day. And while you're doing that, I want you to do a few other things. I want you to keep a running summary of the material. And this can be as detailed or as non-detailed as you want, as you find comfortable. So some people really basically gain a lot from basically transcribing everything they study, and that helps them memorize, and that's great. And other people, really, it's just high-level bullet points, like just the formulas and just a few very general things, whatever works for you. But I do recommend writing down some things and not just watching, because that can sometimes lead to sort of zoning out and not really being as focused as we want to be. The second thing is keep a list of tips of stuff that as you're studying, you say to yourself, like, ooh, this thing might come in handy. So not not just material per se, but insights you have into the material, how to use it, and so on. So that's the first day of your 2-day mini schedule. 2-day mini schedule per topic. On the second day, you're going to solve some subject-related questions. On examPAL, what this means is you're going to complete the practice phase, which I already talked about, the diagnostic, the improvement, and then the optimization. And when you do so, in the same day, besides solving the questions, I want you to also review your mistakes and keep a running list of mistake types. So not of every single mistake necessarily, but of recurring mistakes and what characterizes them, and most importantly, how they can be avoided, what you've learned from them. Okay? And also keep updating your practical tips list from the day before. So this is basically what your first 47 days look like. Okay? So what's left to do is divide your time from now, for all these 47 days. Look at your calendar and plan your time knowing when you're going to be working on each of the topics for this whole time. So this starts by looking at your calendar and first of all marking all the non-GRE things you have to do. So if you have to work, obviously mark that down. But all of your other constraints, stuff that is ironclad, you know you have to go to that weekend with your family, so write that down. And also stuff that's just you want to do, like you want to go exercising 3 times a week. That's great. Write that down. The point is, you want to be realistic when you're building your schedule. You don't want to be overly optimistic and say to yourself, after working a 9 to 5 day and having dinner with my friends, I'm going to come home and study for 4 hours into the wee hours. It's just not going to happen. So be realistic and divide your time, hitting one topic every 2 days. And what I haven't mentioned, besides this 2-day, or not besides, but simultaneous to this 2-day schedule of going over the material, we also want to be working on our verbal skills. How do we do that? We do 2 things. We read. What do we read? It's up to you. We recommend reading some kind of high quality periodical. So The Economist, New Yorker, or something that's more specifically suited to something that interests you. If you have a hobby or something, find a magazine that's about it, provided it's something quality. And if not, read a book. And also it's working on your vocabulary, which, as you guys probably know, is very important for the GRE. The vocabulary tends to be quite hard, which on examPAL you can do. We have a vocabulary section. We provide you with a really long list of words that you want to know, and just spend some time going over them. So I recommend your daily schedule adding this either early in the day or late in the day, so as not to break up the rest of your study. A total of about an hour and a half a day. And also you take a day off a week. It's kind of easy to overlook this, but don't. It's worth it. After all this, leave 3 days on your calendar unscheduled. Why? Is this because you're going to take a vacation? Maybe, I guess, but probably not. The main goal, or the main reason, is just because you never know what's going to happen. And first of all, maybe even though you were very realistic, still some more constraints popped up, and you didn't have as much time as you thought you would. And it's good to have a place or a time that is where you can push stuff back to and go over them here. Another thing is, you might have trouble with one of the topics, and instead of getting bogged down and throwing your whole schedule off during the first 47 days, you might make a conscious decision. In fact, I encourage you to make a conscious decision not to get bogged down, but rather to keep moving and push it to these unscheduled days. So that's what they're there for. Okay, so following this, the second substantial phase is the last 10 days. So here we've moved on from really basically getting to know the material, and we're already in the run-up to the test, working on really getting ourselves honed for the test itself. So what do we do? What do these last 10 days consist of? So two things. It's a rotating schedule of something different every other day. So every other day, say every even day, you're going to do a review. Okay? What does that mean? It means every day go over 2 or 3 of the major topics that you've gone over in the first 47 days, but at a high level review. So don't watch the videos again, but rather go over topics that you found specifically difficult. And this is why it pays to really be writing these things down as you go along. So know where you have to go back. Go over your material summary. Again, the goal is to get to the point in which you know it really well and it bores you because it's obvious already to you. Go over your practical tips list. Okay, and again, and here the goal isn't just to make sure you remember them, but rather to be all the time checking yourself that you're actually implementing these tips. If you're not implementing a tip, then it's not really useful to you. So you want to make sure that this is actually a living, breathing document, as it were, and you're also going to be updating it. And finally, going over your mistakes list also. And similar comment here. If you're repeating the mistakes that are on your mistakes list, then something is wrong, and it's something you need to be thinking about and think about what is the tool that I can utilize in order to avoid this mistake. And it can be something really simple. Sometimes we make mistakes that are just kind of dumb mistakes, but we do them time after time. And sometimes we can do really simple technical stuff, like, it can be something as simple as actually blocking part of the screen because we're getting distracted and just focusing on one part of it, say in quantitative comparison, looking at each quantity separately and not confusing them, stuff like that. Okay, so that's the first day. Say we said the even day. So the odd day, you're going to be doing practice tests, taking the ETS CATs, one for each of these days, from start to finish. If you're not working during these last 10 days, you can take a few days off of work, then do it at the same time of day that your real test is going to be, and then spend the rest of the day or the afternoon reviewing it. How did you do? What went right? What went wrong? What do you need to work on? And then the rest of the day, the evening, should be spent solving questions similar to the ones that you got wrong, or from the same topics, the ones you got wrong, on an examPAL or on the official guide for GRE. And all the time thinking how you can avoid these mistakes next time. After all of this, the day before the test should be left unscheduled, and this time not in order to push material to there, but it should actually be unscheduled. You should take it off, take some time to breathe, say hi to people you've been ignoring for the past 2 months, and have a good time, but not too good a time. You do want to get a good night's sleep, obviously, before the test, because the next day you're going to ace the GRE. So just to connect it back to John Doe we talked about before, this is how it looks in his schedule. This is a peek into a week in John Doe's schedule. This is specifically the third week in his schedule. So what you can see here is that he studies a total of 3 hours a day on weekdays, half of which is devoted to verbal study, and he studies another 4 to 8 hours on weekend. And John has enough time, both for his job and for other pursuits. He goes to the gym, he goes to a social event on one of the days, and obviously he takes an entire day off. And the point is with another 7 weeks that look a lot like this is enough study time for him to prepare comprehensively over this 2-month period. Even given the constraints I mentioned before about he has to take time off, still this is enough time for him. And again, the point is not, of course, that your plan will look exactly like this. We all have to customize to our personal schedules, but this is a general outline of what it will look like for a lot of you if you're doing the 2-month plan. And I will mention we have on our site, on our blog post, we have a tool that can actually help you download like a template that's like this and customize it to yourself. So I urge you to check that out. Maybe we'll send you a link or something later. Okay, so let's talk about other study plans. We're going to talk about a 1-month plan, and we're going to talk about a 3-month plan. However, before we do that, just to shift gears for a minute, let's talk about what happens or how you should be, what you should be thinking if you're retaking the GRE. If you're not, if this is not your first time. Okay, so basically, the short answer is everything I'm saying is still relevant to you. Okay, because what we urge retakers to do is not to cut corners and just take a few practice tests and jump right in, but to really build the study plan again, better. What does it mean better? Well, the first thing that you should be doing is debriefing, is learning from your mistakes. So really, you want to do two things. First of all, you want to go over to the fundamentals again. This is especially if there's been a little bit of time lag between your first and second test. If so, don't cut corners. Actually go back and study the material again. And the second thing is, as I just said, debrief. Learn from your mistakes. So ask yourself what went wrong if you're taking the test again. Apparently something went wrong or didn't go well enough. And ask yourself what went wrong. And there are a few different types of answers that you might have to this, and they'll inform what you do next. If what went wrong is you didn't know the material well enough, right? You sat for the GRE the first time, and you just weren't sure enough about the material, so it's pretty clear what you have to do. You have to go back and you have to learn the basics. And then really everything applies to you. Just do a study plan the way we already mentioned, and go back and study it. But maybe you made a lot of silly mistakes. The types of mistakes that when looking back at them, you say to yourself, I knew this. It's not that I don't know it. I just, I goofed up, but there's nothing really here that means anything about my level. Now it's true that you do know the material on these, but as I already mentioned before, sometimes there's very simple things we can do that can help us avoid these things, such as writing down material on our scratch pad, not doing calculations in our head, that kind of thing. And finally, you might realize that, say, you ran out of time on a test. And if that's the case, then really you might have to rethink your PAL strategy, because maybe you're wasting too much time, say, solving things in a precise way, which is good and well, but it takes a lot of time, when you could be saving a lot of time using shortcut tools, alternative, or logical tools. And then in that case, then you want to be taking the course again, and really having an eye on working on different test strategies. Even if you know the material already, working on implementing different test strategies. Okay, so back to our study guide. So I talked about how to do a 2-month plan, and I hope it was helpful to you guys. But what about if that's just not your situation? What if you want to take the test 30 days from now or so? So this is hard, but it is possible. And it's possible even if you have a job and you can't devote your entire life to studying. So before we were talking about John, let's talk now about someone like Larry. So Larry has to take the GRE a month from now, no ifs and no buts. But say he's not currently working, so he can study a lot of the time, and he's a native English speaker. So what does this mean? What does this mean for him? And I'll just say that this is just one example of a person for whom a 30-day plan is relevant, but it can also be relevant for people that are working but are willing to spend all of their time when they're not working. So that's all evenings and pretty much the whole weekends studying. Then a 30-day plan still can work for you. So, so this is not a great situation. It's not a lot of fun, and there are a lot of clear disadvantages to it. There's a lot of pressure, and it's going to be really hard to find a work-life balance. You're not going to be too fun probably over the next couple of weeks. However, even though this is not the way we recommend, to do, there are actually a few pros. One is you're going to be fresh and sharp. Okay, you're not going to have enough time to forget things, which is a problem when you start doing longer study plans. Excuse me. And another thing is that examPAL already automatically feeds you questions which incorporate material that you've already done. So, for example, when you're going over a coordinate geometry question, excuse me, you're repeating the principles of triangles, quadrilaterals, circles, and polygons. And what that means is you're constantly revising even as you're learning new material. So in each new topic, we're already incorporating things we've studied before, which helps us study faster. By the way, you guys are awfully quiet. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I will try and answer them. Okay, so actually, just guys, give me 1 second. I'm going to have a glass of water. I'll be with you in 30 seconds or less. All right, thanks for bearing with me. So, what does a 30-day plan consist of? So basically, it consists of daily study. You're not going to be able to do it if you don't study all the time, although you still should take a day off a week, even if you're stressed. And what we did before in, 47 days? We're going to do now in 20 days, okay? So your subject review and practice is going to be now in 20 days. How do you do that? So before we had a 2-day mini schedule for each topic, and now we're going to have a 1-day mini schedule for each topic. What does that look like? Well, we just smush it all into 1 day. So in the morning, we're going to review fundamental material. Again, watching the lesson, the intro videos, and so on. And while you're doing that, all the things I mentioned before, keeping a running summary, a practical tips list, and in the afternoon, you're going to move on and solve some subject-related questions. So in examPAL, this means doing the practice phases, and while you're doing it, keep a running list of your mistakes and updating your practical tips list again. So really, what we did for in 2 days, doing it in 1 day here. Now, in addition, you're also going to want to find time to working on your verbal skills. So we recommend doing it in the early morning or late in the evening. So that's the first 20 days. And again, what you're going to need to do now when you're building your study plan is look at your calendar and schedule each day which topic you're doing, and that'll make you committed to it, and make sure you do everything. By the way, if you are doing exactly 20 days, you won't have time for a full day for each topic, because they're just a little bit more than 20 topics. There's like 21 or 22, I believe. On examPAL, at least this is how we've divided them. So what that means is you're going to have to find about 2 or 3 topics that you're going to have to stick together into 1 day. But the rest of the topics you can do in for a day for each topic. So anyway, that's fine. So that's the first 20 days. And then the last 10 days really look actually exactly the same as the 60-day study plan. So on odd days, you're going to review. On even days, you're going to do practice tests, and all the same things I mentioned before. Spend time going over problematic topics, go over your summaries, your tips list, your mistakes list, and analyze your tests. Here as well, take the day off before the test. I know it's tempting to study more and more and more, but at a certain point, it's not going to register, and you will gain more from relaxing. And finally, on the day of the test, go ahead and ace it. So, and this might look, this is a week of a 30-day plan, an example 30-day plan, and this is what it looks like. And what you see here is that it's a tighter plan than the one we looked at before for John Doe, 60-day John Doe. This person is going straight from studying in the morning to work to studying in the evening, fitting in the same evening both topic review and a practice. In each day hitting a different topic, triangles, interests, stats, ratios, and so on. And while he does have a day off, giving himself a day off, on the other day of the weekend, he really studies from dawn to dusk. Really long day, fits in 3 different topics. So it's not easy, but with 4 more weeks or 3 more weeks, 4 total weeks like this, Larry can be prepared for everything. And if you can build a schedule that looks like this, you can also be. All right, so we're 2/3 of the way through. We've talked about how you can prepare in the recommended amount of time, which is 2 months. And we talked about how you can prepare in the short amount of time, which is 1 month. What about if you want to study over a longer amount of time? What about if you want to study over 3 months? And the reason that you might do this is, say, you can postpone the test for a little bit. You don't have to take it that soon. But on your day-to-day schedule, you really don't have a lot of time to study. For example, you may be someone like Tammy. Say you're a first-time test taker, but you're really, really busy. In fact, let's say you can only set aside 2 hours of studying 3 times a week during the work week, and you can't take off any work before the test in the week before the test. But you can study a lot on the weekends, or at least more on the weekends than you can during the week. But you still have constraints. So Tammy, say, for example, she has a family vacation a month into her study test, and 2 months in, she has to take a week off because she has a really stressful presentation at work she has to work on, and she's not going to be able to study during that time. So this time pressure is what has pushed our friend Tammy here to go for a 90-day topic. And if this sounds anything like you, as in you have a very busy life, but you want to study and you can postpone it a little bit, then maybe this plan is the one for you. However, I don't recommend this plan if your goal is simply to study a lot. And you think, the more I study, the merrier. Because the truth is, 3 months is a long time to study, and it might be too long. The concern being, we mentioned this before, that by the time you wrap up your studies, you will have forgotten some of what you studied, and you just might be burned out. At a certain point, studying really becomes exhausting and becomes less effective, and for that reason, studying for so long really isn't necessary. Remember, we're only aiming for 100 to 120 hours or 130 to 150 hours. Over 3 months, this is only an hour per day on average. So really, this only makes sense if you have very little time during the day and week to spread your studies out. If it's not the case, if you have more time, it might actually make sense to delay your study plan by a month and then do the 60-day study plan, which we feel is more efficient. Or another relevant scenario is if you're a non-native speaker and you need to brush up on your language skills. And if that's the case, I recommend devoting the upcoming month to improving your language skills. So devoting a lot of time each day to reading magazine articles, preferably from quality magazines, and books, and only after this begin a 60-day plan. One more note before we jump into the plan itself. If you are going to do a 90-day plan, I recommend finding a real-life examPAL, someone else is doing it, either to study together or at the very least to meet like once a week and to kind of discuss your progress. This should make studying more enjoyable and more efficient, since explaining something is the best way to understand. All right, so how do we actually build a 90-day plan? Well, here we're going to do in 77 days what we did before in 20 days and before that in 47 days. This is the time when you're going to be working on studying the fundamental material and practicing. So how do we do that? Well, you're going to be able to spend 3 days on each topic. This says 1 day, but sorry, that's a mistake. We're going to be able to spend 3 days on each topic. Thusly, in the first day, we're going to go over the lesson and the intro, study the material. The second day, we're going to practice. And the third day, we're going to review. We're going to go over in the practice what we found hard. We're going to go and maybe solve more questions, and we're going to go back to the material and go over the stuff that we found hard. And, of course, all this time, we're going to be reviewing our summary, our practical tips list, our mistakes list, all of that. Then probably makes sense to leave 3 or 4 days unscheduled as we did before. But following this, last 10 days are again going to be similar or actually pretty much identical to what we've already discussed before in the last 10 days. That this part is the same between the study plans. Take 1 day to review, and then the next day do a practice test, repeat, and do it again. Do that 4 times, and you're going to be ready for the test. Take the day before the test off, you've earned it, and then the next day, ace the test. So that's it. That's really how we recommend building a 90-day plan, and which goes together with our 2 previous plans. Before and now I have some more tips and suggestions for you guys, which are relevant for all 3 of these study plans. So just before that, I hope that was clear and helpful to you guys. And again, feel free to ask me any questions about it if you have any, because I see we're going to have a few minutes left and I'll be able to answer. Anyway, here are some other things to keep in mind, whichever study plan you use. First one is silence is golden. When you're studying, your phone should be silenced, in a different room, under a pillow. Your browser, if you're studying with examPAL on the computer, so it should have nothing else open aside from examPAL. And you need to find a study place without a lot of other people. Okay, there's really no need to go over to the fridge every 20 minutes to see if there have been any updates there. You should sit down and study. Hold on, the question, any tips about the writing? So I assume you mean the analytical writing you have to write. So I didn't go into that here because it's just part of the test, and that's another one of the topics, as far as I'm concerned, in building your study plan that you have to take into account. So and on the examPAL course, it's exactly like this. On the examPAL course, it's just another one of the topics you have scheduled. We have videos on it. It is something you can practice. On examPAL, you practice it by actually writing essays, sending them in, and we review them. We give them back to you with notes and so on. So yeah, it doesn't change. It's not something that's outside your study plan. It's part of your study plan. Depending on how much you care about your score on this section and how what your level is, you might want to spend more or less time on it. So there's some room for dynamism there. That's really how it relates to the study plan. But if you have any more specific questions about it, I can try. So when you're studying, if you're having trouble grasping something, so again, you're going to want to ask yourself a question that I think we've already discussed in the context of retaking the test, which is, what is the problem? What is the thing that I'm having trouble grasping? So if it's something that's small, don't waste time. Don't get bogged down. You want to stick to your schedule. Just push it later. This is why you leave days open to the review, or to the last 10 days to your review days. If, however, it's something fundamental, then go back and study it. And if this means, and it probably will mean, spending more time on this topic, so be it. Spend more time on this topic and steal from another topic. spend less time at it. Preferably one that you feel more confident in. I will say though, don't steal entirely from a topic. That is, don't not go over any other topic. Leave yourself at least some time to go over even topics you feel very confident in. Another tip is that mistakes are opportunities. Again, this is something I think I've already kind of mentioned many times during this past hour when all my talk about keeping a mistakes list and everything. But really, this is what separates good students from great students, from students that get good scores and students that get great scores. Students that get great scores are ones that learn from their mistakes and learn not to repeat those mistakes. So ask yourself all the time, why did I get this wrong? What needs to be done differently? Which PAL strategy did I use? Which ones were available to me? Luckily for you, examPAL helps you answer this question. So which ones were available to me and which ones should I have used? And if you feel like this is bogging you down and wasting your time, so be it. You're better off doing 500 questions and really understanding them and going over the ones that you get wrong and understanding them than you are doing 10,000 questions robotically, just one after another. So it's worth it. Get 8 hours of sleep every night, no excuses, and exercise. It's recommended. So, and be optimistic, but at the same time realistic. And again, I think we've touched on this. When you're building your schedule, be realistic. Don't think you can do more than is humanly possible, and don't think you can do more than is humanly preferable, right? Give yourself time to do other things as well. Don't expect to be studying 14 hours a day and also having an active social life and also keeping your job. Rather, be realistic and build a study that fits your life, helps you structure it, and not the one that stresses you out. So that's really it, guys. That's pretty much all I have to say. And as a token of appreciation for sticking with me throughout all my throat troubles you guys have heard, there it is. I want to remind you of our special offer of 25% off all of our GRE courses for the next week. You can go to our bootcamp agenda page, and you will. And also, if you just scroll up just a little bit in the chat, there's a link there from Karine. You'll be able to use it. So that's really it. I hope this was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions about this or even about the GRE in general, I'm going to stick here for a few more minutes and answer them. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Jared, for sure. Thanks for being with me. And if not, I hope to see you guys on examPAL.com. If you come there, you can go there right now, and even without signing up, you can. There's a chat bubble there, and you can ask a question. And if you ask for Dave, I will answer it. Thank you, Anya Christabel. And so I hope to see you there, and I hope this helped you guys ace the GRE. And yeah, Taylor, I'm going to put the first schedule back on the screen. However, I should have said this, for all of you, we were going to send you a recording of the whole thing, so don't worry about it. You will have a chance. And another thing is, I mentioned this as well, we have blog posts about each of these things, different articles on our site about a 2-month study plan, 1-month study plan, 3-month study plans that also have a lot of the material I went over and also have tools for building an interactive plan. So that's also there. This is a week from the first study plan. I guess that's what you meant. I hope that's what you meant, that is. So take a minute and look at it. And again, go to, so you can search in Google now, examPAL blog, 2-month study plan, 1-month study plan. Probably the ones you'll find are for the GMAT. We have articles on the GMAT, but a lot of the material there will be useful to you as well. So don't hesitate to use that. That's it, guys. Again, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for being with me. I'm going to leave this open just for a second, but after that, I will close it down, and hope you guys have a good evening. Signing off.